are the myths that we're often told around either weight loss or getting healthy in the new year. Because how many of you think this is the year I'm going to get healthy, or this is the year that something is going to change? So you must count calories to lose weight. Exercise is the best way to lose weight. Eating fat makes you fat. The key to losing weight is having tremendous willpower, right? If you can't turn that cookie down, that's a character flaw. Okay? The government guidelines for eating are worth following. Now remember, this is Nutrition Lies, okay? You need carbs intake for energy, and cholesterol causes heart disease, okay? So we're going to, in some form or fashion, address each one of these issues this evening. So the first thing I want to clear up is the idea that weight, or that number on the scale, reflects true health. Now, you'll see the term BMI. Has anyone ever heard that term kind of thrown around? That stands for body mass index, and it uses your height and your weight in kilograms to come up with a number. And if it's over 25, then you're overweight. And if it's over 29, you're obese. Okay, but the problem is, it doesn't really tell you much about where your fat is distributed. It cannot tell you how much lean body mass you have. So you can have an athlete who's tremendously muscular come up with an obese or overweight BMI. And yet they're neither of those things. So here's an example. This is the TOFI reality. This is a slide where they're cutting somebody this way across their hip area. They have the same weight, but you can see the fat distribution is around the internal organs on one of them, and that makes them sick. Whereas the other person has more of the fat distributed around the edges, and that is a safer fat. Now, you can have too much of any kind of fat, but the idea here is they weigh the same. And yet one is healthy and one is not. And it has to do with where your fat is distributed. So weight is not really a good indicator of fat. So how can you measure true health? It's not a number on a scale, and it's not your BMI in relation to your height. You can start very basically with your waist circumference. So this is very general. This is not a really precise thing, but right out of the gate, if you are female and your waist circumference is greater than 35 inches, you're likely to have some risky health indicators. And for men, it's 40 inches. Now, again, this has some limitations, because if you're a larger person, that may not exactly hold true. So how do you get even better? You measure your waist to hip ratio. And all these require is a simple tape measure. So for your waist circumference, you want it at less than half of your height. And then for your hip ratio, you're comparing that, you divide it. You want females less than 0.8 and males less than 0.9. Okay, so this is in inches. And I can give you this formula if you are more interested, but you can look this up online, but it's the waist to hip ratio or the waist to height ratio, either one. And essentially that's going to really put a scale to your size. Now, this is where we're going to get much more serious, and this is blood test. This is where you're going to get really precise. So we're not looking at the number on a scale. We're not really looking at our waist circumference. What we're looking at are very typical, for the most part, blood tests that your doctor will order. But I have a couple of them highlighted here. And the reason I have them highlighted, which is fasting insulin and vitamin D, is because your doctor won't order those naturally. You need to ask them to include that on your annual exam. Why? Two reasons. Vitamin D is a really strong indicator of where your immune health is, whether or not your mood is going to be stable. And it also helps with blood sugar regulation and thyroid health, as well as other things in the body. Vitamin D is kind of your Wi-Fi, and it's the precursor to all of your hormones, to testosterone and estrogen and all of those other things. So we know there's a lot of literature around your vitamin D levels. So you need to ask your doctor. And what we want the level to be is close to 60. So keep that in mind. They'll tell you 30 is enough, but you don't want just enough to get by. You want to optimize it. And The literature is pretty strong, hashtag COVID, around the serum level being 60 or better. And I don't have a single patient that doesn't need to address this, that doesn't need to supplement significantly in some way. And you don't know unless you test. So the other highlighted test that I want to talk about is fasting insulin. Many times you'll see the test above that says fasting blood sugar. Every doctor will measure that, but that is a very late measure of your health. You want to know where your insulin is because that is going to be a bigger predictor of early identification of health problems. By the time your blood sugar is high, you're way down the road in terms of developing chronic health problems. And hemoglobin A1C, that, if you've ever heard of that, it's abbreviated HA1C. Your doctor may or may not order that. That is a measure of how much sugar has been in your bloodstream for the last 3 months. So it kind of evaluates not only your diet, but also how well blood sugar is being cleared from the bloodstream. You're getting a picture here that your blood sugar matters more than your weight. Yeah. So there's other things, liver enzymes, thyroid function. Those are more typical, but you'll notice in the parentheses that thyroid is more than something called TSH. You need to also tell your doctor you want the other things measured, free T3 and free T4. Now, the last thing I want to talk about on this page is this fasting lipid panel. Your doctor will measure this, but they're going to focus on total cholesterol. It's not really that relevant. The key thing about cholesterol is you want it above 150. Absolutely. Now, they're going to tell you they want it below 150, but I will tell you you will have mood issues and other functioning problems when it's below 150. And I like it much higher than that. I'm more interested in your triglycerides. So the key thing you want to be paying attention to is triglycerides. Now, this is where the myth starts, is that fat will make you fat because a triglyceride is a lipid or a fat. But when you're measuring fasting triglycerides in a human being, it reflects your carbohydrate intake. It's all about your blood sugar. So you want that less than 150, and ideally, I'd like to see patients at 75. And there's a way to do that, but we won't cover that tonight. But these are all blood tests that you need to expect to get from your doctor and ask for the results. Don't just accept that, oh, it's now sitting in my chart. But the ones that are bolded, you need to specifically ask for. And optionally, there's one below the fasting insulin called ApoB. That is going to give you your cardiovascular risk, much more than total cholesterol. Most people entering the hospital with a heart attack have normal cholesterol. It's what it's made up of that matters. Anybody have questions? And you'll get a copy of this email, a blood test that matters. ApoB, it's apoprotein B, and it's a cardiovascular risk. Your doctor would know what it is. It's a specific blood test. It won't come on a regular fasting lipid panel. So a fasting lipid panel is automatically going to measure your triglycerides and your HDL and your LDL, and that's all good, but it's the interpretation that's important. But fasting insulin and vitamin D, they will never automatically order. You need to advocate for that. Okay, so why? Because high insulin brings about all of these other issues. And this will happen about 10 years before you'll ever develop type 2 diabetes. You will have high insulin, and they can chart that. So that's the time you want to turn that around, is before you've progressed to type 2 diabetes. But that's only one of the results of high insulin. You can also have high blood pressure, high triglycerides, heart disease. You can have sarcopenia, which is loss of lean body mass. You might have infertility or PCOS. This is a big factor today. Fertility has dropped about 70% in this generation, in both men and women. It's also dementia and Alzheimer's risk. Yes, you have some genetic markers, but they pale in comparison to your dietary choices, and specifically to your level of insulin. So the higher your insulin is, the more resistant you are, and the more likely you are to have this cluster of one of these symptoms. You don't have to have all of them. Maybe you only show up with high blood pressure. Maybe you show up with type 2 diabetes. Maybe you develop gout or And you may not be obese. You can be thin and have these conditions. All right. So what causes these? Sleep deprivation, stress. Who doesn't have that, right? Frequent or excessive consumption of refined sugar or carbohydrates. And this is the surprise for a lot of people. Soybean oil, canola oil, corn oil, all of the oils that you see in processed foods. They're known as seed oils. They call them vegetable oils, but they're not vegetable oils. They're seed oils. There's extremely toxic processing that goes into making these, and they're highly inflammatory because of their fatty acid profile. So you want to avoid those, which means, yes, you do need to cook some of your food. Now, there are companies that are beginning to make higher quality products. So check the labels. If it has soybean oil, you know it's cheap. And unfortunately, most of our restaurants, that's what you're going to be getting. So how do you know if you're insulin resistant or have high insulin? Here are 8 symptoms you might have if you have a lot of belly fat or high blood pressure, and or if you have brain fog, like your brain is not clear, you're hungry between meals or right after eating, you may have insulin that's too high. You will have cravings, especially for carbohydrates in the evening, tingling hands and feet, that's neuropathy. And you may have skin tags on your neck and back especially, and tired and lack energy, especially in the afternoons. Now, here's your blood test. If your insulin is less than 6, you're likely okay. 7 to 17 is a warning range. Now, they'll tell you you're good all the way up to 35. But I will tell you, you're in trouble if you're over 6 or 7. 17, you know you are. Now, if your triglyceride to HDL ratio, see, these are normal tests. You can take your calculator out and run these formulas and understand without ever doing another test where you're at with your insulin. So what raises blood sugar and then insulin? Insulin is a hormone that's used to retrieve blood sugar out of your bloodstream and get it into your cells. It's the doorman, okay? It's the lock and key. You can see the blue line is carbohydrates. Protein does it a little bit. Fat, it's a flat line. So the culprit in our diets with driving insulin is eating carbohydrates. So let's refocus our health to be, do we have increased energy? How about our hunger signals? Okay, we're not going to look at a scale. We want to understand, are we craving foods all the time? Do we feel out of control? Is it really about willpower? It's really about biochemistry and what your hormones are signaling. Is your belly shrinking? The number on the scale may actually go up as you exercise because lean body mass weighs more than fat. So that's why the scale can be inaccurate. So is your fat in the safest place? Do you have sufficient nutrients? When you get that vitamin D test, where is it? Are you in a healthy range? How's your immune function? Are you always getting sick? That's true health. That's what we're going for. And the number on the scale will just settle out where it needs to be because these numbers will give us a much better picture of what health is. Now, what does it mean if you are going to lose some weight? What's healthy weight loss? It means being realistic. If you want to lose 10 pounds in 1 week, it's not going to happen, and maybe not even in a month. You need to get enough protein. So when you're reducing calories, how many of you remember seeing The Biggest Loser on television? How much weight did all of those contestants lose? A lot, okay? But they were severely restricting calories and they were exercising a ton. Now, 6 years later, they were actually studied by scientists. They've lost the ability to burn 700 calories a day and they're constantly starving and they have all regained the weight. So when you lose the ability to burn 700 calories a day, that's a meal. That's 6 years after this. Did they all lose the weight in the beginning? Yes. Can they keep it off? No. And are they starving? Yes. So that's not a healthy diet. That is not healthy weight loss. So you need to get enough protein and energy and calories. I've had to tell some clients, you need to eat more in order to lose weight, which sounds completely counterintuitive, but we change the type of calorie that they're eating. So you're going to choose foods that protect lean body mass. So it's going to be protein and fat. It's not going to be carbohydrates. And managing your hunger means you're not going to say, well, next month, I'm going to go back to eating the way that I always ate, because you'll go back to weighing what you always weighed, plus 10% more, because you've now messed with your hormones. So how do you measure healthy weight loss? Maybe weigh yourself once a week. If your clothes are fitting more loosely, that's a clue. Measure your waist circumference. Do you have a blood pressure cuff? How's your blood pressure doing? These are all really low-cost, easy ways to measure. So how are we going to provide healthy calories? We have three options: carbohydrates, protein, or fat. So I want you to be carb aware. This isn't about not eating them at all, but understanding that different types of carbohydrates will have different effects in your body. So there's a little picture. You can see the pizza and the fast food and the sodas kind of on the red side of this line, whereas your vegetables and green leafies and avocados are going to enter your bloodstream more slowly. And this is very general, okay? So here's an example of what a blood sugar spike is going to look like in the morning. If you eat a fruit smoothie because you blended up all the fruit and now the sugar goes straight into your bloodstream. Everyone thinks a fruit smoothie is a good choice, but your blood sugar is going to shoot up really high versus eating an omelet or an avocado. Notice that blood sugar line stays very flat. So in the morning, you don't want to choose a bunch of carbohydrates, and especially a fruit smoothie, because that's going to spike your insulin and your blood sugar, and then consequently your insulin, all right? So not all carbs are created equal. I'm going through this quickly. Focus on real food, meaning if you can go into the produce section, that's a good bet. Stay away from the packages in the middle, all right? So you want to eat both raw, steamed, and roasted vegetables, leafy greens. Be careful with fruits. Treat it like dessert. Fruits are great, but they are dessert. They're not a snack to be eaten on their own because they can trigger tremendous blood sugar spikes. You want to avoid all of the snack foods, especially gluten-free snack foods. They can spike your blood sugar worse. And no fruit juice. How many of you have been taught orange juice is healthy? It's an important source of vitamin C. That's great marketing. Outstanding marketing. The only problem is it's not true. So no fruit juice. Even if you make your own, your liver doesn't care where the fruit juice came from. All it knows is it's a straight shot of sugar, very similar to alcohol. It's processed the same way I won't go into detail, but in your liver, it doesn't know the difference. And so we want to protect that. Watch for fructose or fructose. You can pronounce it either way. That's a sweetener in a lot of processed foods. That is what destroys your liver faster than anything. And you won't feel it. Okay, so this is a general rule. Now, I'm not saying you have to count everything, but if you read a label and you look at carbohydrates on a food label, over the course of a day, you might be surprised to see how many carbs are in a serving of something. So over the course of a day, you want to keep your carbs less than about 130 grams. And honestly, you could keep it a lot lower than that. But I'm just telling you, this is more likely to keep you in a safer range. But right now, the average person eats at least 250 grams of carbs a day, because that's the dietary guidelines. You will develop insulin resistance over time. You will. So how many carbs can you safely consume? Well, everybody's different, especially when it comes to metabolism. But that's why I say, okay, less than 130 grams. But are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to gain? That's going to change the answer. And insulin resistance, bottom line is, too many carbs will cause that. So for some people, they're going to be able to eat 130 grams of carbs a day, no problem. 100 grams of carbs, no problem. Other people, 10 grams a day will be their limit before their blood sugar goes awry. So the truth is, how many carbs do you need to survive in the human diet? 0. It is not true that you must consume carbohydrates for energy. Your body is amazing and knows how to produce the energy called glucose that we can get from carbohydrates out of protein and fat. Doesn't need This is optional. And now they're delicious, but we're out of control. This is the big thing that's changed in the American diet in the last generation. And we can track it like clockwork in terms of what's causing the big rise in diabetes and other health problems. So you don't need any, so don't worry that you're not going to get enough, and don't replace it with artificial sweeteners.
So if someone has insulin resistance,
Mhm.
how, and so you start eating less carbs and more fat and protein.
Yes.
How long does it take a typical person to, can you stabilize that insulin?
Yes, in fact,
And how long?
under the direction of a healthcare provider, somebody who is on insulin will be advised to be in close contact with their doctor when they cut their carbs, because if they're taking insulin, they may be off of it in 2 days, depending on how quickly they're willing to reduce their carbohydrate intake. Now, that is not everybody, but it's quick enough that that is a big warning to those who are currently diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. We know they have insulin resistance. Not everybody is on insulin that is type 2 diabetic. But if they are, and then they decide to reduce their carbohydrates significantly, they may be off of that within 2 to 3 days entirely. They need to be off of it. It will be unsafe to be on it.
Your body can respond that quickly.
It can, yes.
Okay, but if they aren't taking insulin, which,
Your body will adjust. It will just naturally.
okay, the reason why I asked
Yeah.
is funny because, a doctor that I had years ago, he goes, yeah, everybody wants to do their blood test like in April because that gives them 3 months after the after the holidays to like get their blood sugar in a better place, before they do these blood tests. And
Right.
I'm like, oh,
That's a
smart
great
idea.
That's a good, she's like, that's a good strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be afraid after this week. I don't know. I think I went through 5 boxes of Snicker ice cream bars. Like, it was a stressful week.
But I do want to add a bright spot to that, because it's not about never having a treat. But if you're constantly doing that, your body will not be able to come back from that. So you want to remain in a position to celebrate when that time comes around. Your body can come back from occasional treats and spikes, absolutely. But if you're constantly supplying carbohydrates, your body you kind of break yourself and you can't respond normally, and then it just stays stuck. And that's insulin resistance, where it just can't ever come down. And so that's why we want to focus on proteins and fats. And you can throw in a few carbohydrates.
But it can come down
Yes,
if you change your diet.
yes, it absolutely can come down if you're willing to change your diet. And it doesn't mean giving up everything wonderful. You just reorient what your focus is, and you'll be surprised how full you are, how even your energy is. You won't have the dip in your blood sugar during the day. You'll sleep better at night. Your weight will, all the things kind of fix themselves. People want to say, well, I have this health condition. Well, it pretty much just fixes itself. Your body's amazing and very resilient, and it doesn't take long. So how much protein do you need? It depends on your body size. This is a formula that I give. You divide your weight by 2.2 to get it in kilograms. And this is kind of a range. If you're moderately active, it's 1.2 to 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And this will give you a goal for the day. Why do you want a goal for the day? You want to know how much protein you need to be able to repair and build. Think of a construction site, all the building materials. That's your protein. That's its job. It's there to repair bones, muscle, your GI tract lining, which replaces itself every week. Your immune function. If you don't eat protein, your body has to go, well, gee, what am I going to eliminate this week and not repair? Or maybe I'm just not going to produce a robust immune function. This is the problem. And so most people who are fairly active are going to be about 1.5 grams of protein. So for the average woman, we're talking, it won't be less than 75 grams a day. And you're probably going to be closer to 100 for the average person. So my question is, do you know if you're even close to that? Are you getting that? What are you eating for breakfast? Most people in America are eating a high carbohydrate breakfast because we've been told start with oatmeal, start with cereal. Or if you eat an egg, how many of you are eating maybe 1 or 2 eggs in the morning? That's equivalent to 12 grams of protein. 1 egg is 6 grams. And that's if you also include the yolk. It's not, the protein is evenly divided between the yolk and the white. So don't take the yolk out. So my point is, if you need 100 grams of protein in the course of a day and you're eating 3 meals, you need to distribute that protein across all of those meals, because your body does better with protein at every meal, more even appetite signals, okay? Maybe you need 20 to 30 grams in the morning. What if you're only eating 1 to 2 eggs? No wonder you're hungry 2 hours later and want a snack. Protein helps you to feel full, but eating it with fat is even more important. And that's the next thing. I'll hurry and close on this. Fats are essential. Protein is essential. Carbs are not essential. Remember, we covered carbs, 0 intake. Fats, you've got to have to survive. When I use the word essential, it means you'll die if you don't eat that. Proteins and fats fall into that category. You will die without them. So look at that number, 35% to 80% of your calories can come from fat. And I'm a fan of being up over 40%. And I'm a fan of even higher for people who are trying to reduce insulin resistance. Okay, and here's
What
the
kind of fats?
naturally occurring. So olive oil, avocado, coconut, your nuts and seeds in their whole form, not the vegetable oils. Full fat dairies, not the low fat dairies. Meats, animal proteins, eggs, things that God made in nature, right? And so all of those things are good fats. Here's pictures. So this top row is all of the lards, different types of fats, the tallows, the beef tallows. You have duck fat, you have pork fat, you have beef tallow. Those are all really good to fry in. They're very heat stable. Cook your vegetables in fat. They're delicious. How many of you think vegetables are gross because you don't eat them with any fat or salt on them? Yeah, you got to stop that right now. You want fat on your vegetables because it then is able, your body can then extract all of the fabulous fat soluble vitamins that are in those fabulous vegetables, like vitamin A and vitamin K. They need fat. So put a little butter, put a little olive oil, make them delicious, okay? So here's the unhealthy fats. And I put peanut butter there, not because I'm dogging on peanut butter, because read the labels, a lot of them have added sugar, and a lot of them have other oils in them. It's a fail, okay? And even mayonnaise. So they sell a good avocado mayo at Costco. It's not made with soybean oil, it's made with avocado oil, okay? So you don't have to make everything, you just have to be a good label reader, all right? So effective long-term weight management. This is a lot of scientific data. Don't snack between meals. How scientific is that? That is going to keep your blood sugar even. You want it to go up a little bit at mealtime and then be able to come back down. Stay, then go up a little bit, come back down. If you're always eating, for instance, like, I give up. There's always something in the blood. I'm not going anywhere. Your pancreas is like, just has to keep flooding it, okay? So eat enough at your meal. So when you get up in the morning, make sure you have 20 to 30 grams of protein. You won't be hungry for 4 hours. You won't want a snack. Nor will your kids. Now your kids, if they're young, maybe 20 grams will be sufficient. But if you're an adult, you may need 30 or more. So I know you guys were trying. How full were you when you ate the protein?
Okay, we ate 4 eggs a piece
24 grams of protein.
in the morning and had bacon, and because
Yeah, so that would put you up at around 28 to 30 grams of protein.
I was stuffed. I
Yeah.
couldn't have eaten anything, and I didn't until 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock that night, and laughed about it to you. You're like,
Yeah.
wow, that's really incredible.
So there's proof.
But I couldn't do that every day. I mean,
No,
there's no
and
way.
you may need to just hold it at 20 grams. That might be enough for you. But the point here is I want you to look at these ranges. Look at the carbohydrates. They're keeping them below 70 grams a day. That's not going to be pancakes and waffles and toast for breakfast. That's going to be yogurt or eggs or a protein shake. And your protein You want that to be a significant portion of your diet. Many of us are under consuming protein, and then fat, bring it on. I want you to, and it doesn't take a ton, but it will definitely be more than what you're probably used to. So if you're having protein in the morning, I also want fat with it. Do not eat protein alone, because that is when it starts to spike your insulin. Okay, you want it with fat, and then all your carbs, you eat them, you don't drink them. Okay, no fruit smoothies or orange juice. You need to prioritize your protein. That is number one. You start there. And then you're going to fill a lot of the remaining calories with fat. That's going to help you also feel full and satisfied and pleasured by the sensation. You want your food to be delicious. This is not about deprivation. And then avoid snacking. Now, I didn't cover this, but you want to have a 12-hour break from the last thing you eat in the evening to the first bite you have in the morning, minimum. You can go longer, but that's going to help your insulin have a chance to recover. Is give it that 12 hours. So if you have a snack at 8 o'clock at night, don't stick food in your mouth before 8 in the morning. You can have all the water you want, but no solid food. And then get like at least 7 hours of sleep at night and to help prevent cravings. So set your goal.